We'll start with the Crows. Stop, start, keep. So just picture the scenario where we, the masses, are sitting in the auditorium and the football club is out there on the stool on their own, having to accept this feedback. Stop relying on Tex, Rankin and Dawson for game-winning performances. Who are the next best players at this football club?
Who do you think they are?
Darcy Fogarty kicked plenty of goals last year, but I can't remember that many games where he was in the three most impactful players on the ground. Big Riley Tilthorpe's back.
The thrill seeker. Yep.
We still don't know.
No, not yet.
We think we know. We think we've got a great vibe about him. We know what the desk, Rory Laird and Matt Crouch are at this point. But who are the next ones? Who are the next ones that are really going to change the outcome of games for the Crows? Because it can't be Tex anymore, really.
No,
if it is, then that's a bonus. Isaac Rankin will be a match winner, but it's very hard in this game to be a sole match winner. So who are the next ones? Tallis, Nankervis and Michael Laney might be those types, but we need to see the next group of players. And I've got a little secondary stop. Stop asking Jordan Dawson to stop the opposition's best mid and be your best mid. You can't do it. There's not a player in the competition who can do that.
So you just make him focus on being the best mid.
He either goes and plays on the big-bodied mids, and I think he does it because they haven't got anyone else who's got his size.
No, that's probably right.
That's the reason I think he does it. So don't stop asking him to be a great stopper and a great distributor and creator as well. Start showing us a more consistent method with the ball in hand. 1 week it's rip or bust. Now there's usually another word in there as well, but it's either it's flat out down the highway, ripping the ball back through the middle, or the next week it's handball happy and it's sideways kicks and it's uncontested marks in the back half that don't do much. So I reckon their offensive game last year in the early part of the season when they were going poorly was just nowhere. It was nowhere. In the year previous, the highest scoring team in the comp. As I mentioned, Dawson and Rankin will create heaps. Rochelle can as well. He needs to be touching the ball 17, 18 times a game. Let Alex Neil-Bullen go and play that hard-working
he can do it.
half-forward role. He's built for that. He's been so successful doing that.
Could he be the stopper in the midfield?
He could be.
Get it on Nick Dacos.
Get Rochelle around the ball. Help him to help them. Help him to help them.
Yep.
Keep being hard to play against. So this is the positive part, especially in Adelaide, but for the most part everywhere last year. They're a hard team to play against. They rarely beat themselves. They give great effort. They give great intensity. So keep doing that and they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I can't remember a game really with the Crows. You go, you didn't really turn up today.
Nah, not at all. So that's a great quality to have.
If you were doing your reverse ladder or your ladder right now, where have you got the Crows? Doesn't have to be a specific number, but in what sort of ballpark?
I'm going to mark them harshly because I fell into them last year and had them fourth. And that didn't go so well, as I was reminded many times. I don't know there's a world that Matthew Nick survives a finals.
I was going to ask you,
season.
it's finals or bust, isn't it?
For him. I believe so. Yeah, I don't think there's a world where he survives if they don't make the finals. I know that's an outlandish thing to say at this time of the year, but it feels like that for him.
Well, it's his sixth season.
Yeah.
Not many coaches would go 6 seasons without making one final series.
No. Well, they would argue they did, or they should have. The Dogs.
But they didn't.
The Dogs.
Can I give you a keep for the Adelaide Crows?
Absolutely.
Keep playing Rankin around the footy.
I shouldn't. So in these feedback sessions, there are certain things you feel like should be a given. That feels like it needs to be a given. There were a couple of times late last year where Matthew Nicks, I can recall in pre-games, Isaac will play forward today. You sort of think, well, why? But he did suffer a few. I wonder whether the conditioning group are still like, he's just not quite ready to be a 100% midfielder. They need him to be.
They do.
But I like it. Doggies.
Yes.
Doggies. Stop being so unpredictable. I think the gap between the Dogs' best and the Dogs' worst is a canyon. I think there's no team with a greater gap between their best and
Yeah,
their
I think
worst.
that's fair.
Think about the game. They went to Sydney late-ish in the season, and the Swans admittedly were having some
Was their down
form
period.
woes.
Yeah.
They went there. They went to Sydney on a Sunday afternoon and completely tore them apart.
And Geelong, in Geelong.
That's right. But then they'd have some games against lesser opponents where you're just thinking, what is this? What is this? So they need to just try and level off their performance from their good needs to stay good, but they need to bring up their bad games and try and pinch some of those and allow themselves a chance to finish top 4.
Can I give you a stop?
Yes.
Stop refusing to try Aaron Norton at centre halfback.
Again, if Luke Beveridge was on the stool on the stage, I wouldn't even bother going down the path because I don't think he'd take it on board. Don't you think he would? Don't you think he would have?
What's wrong with trying it?
Well, there's nothing wrong with trying it. I don't think it would work.
You don't think so?
Nah. I don't
In
think
what
he
way?
can kick the ball well enough to be back there. Rory Lobb is a very, very good kick.
He is a good kick, and that's an important part of it. There's probably less need now if Lobb continues to play like that in defence.
Yeah, there is. But, yeah. You think Aaron Norton's got a bit of a hitch in the way he kicks the footy and...
But maybe he's one of those good field kicks and not a great shot for goal.
So I don't know if he would be. That would be my query.
And does it put too much pressure on the two
Is he
young...
nimble enough?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He probably is.
Does it put too much pressure on the other two if he's not there?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Jamar and Darcy.
But do they ever play well together?
Well, I don't think the three... Well, Cody Waitman doesn't seem to play well when the three big guys are up there.
Not sure. Start developing a plan B for games where the high handball game is not the game style to implement, whether it's because the opposition brings great pressure or the weather conditions occasionally say, well, it's wet. We're playing a winter sport. We're outdoors. We can't handball the ball 220 times tonight. So I think they need to have that plan B where they say to themselves at quarter time, guys, we can't flick it around or we can't feed it back at stoppage because the pressure they're bringing is great. So we just got to kick it forward, except that we just want to take some territory, except that we want to play a bit of a territory game. So let's see that from them. Keep believing in Ed Richards around the ball.
Nice, yes.
We interviewed Ed Richards. It might have been on Sunday crunch time or after a game one night. And I asked him specifically, how did it come about? And it was something that they'd always planned to do. But the plan with Ed Richards, he said, was to go in there, have a little bit of a look, but then go back to half-back. But he played so well, they left him in there. I'd leave him in there. I think he's the one that's got that breakaway. He's just got a bit of something different about him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's quite good defensively, but he can run away from stoppage.
Step.
There's a little bit of... He's probably not quite to that level. Well, he's definitely not. There's a little bit of Hayden Young about him.
Yeah. No, I see that comparison.
I think those guys who have played half-back have that natural advantage of knowing what it's like to have played as a defender. So still having that mindset, well, we haven't got the ball, so I've got to get on someone.
I think that helps.
So there you go. There's stop, start, keep for Adelaide and the Doggies.
Adelaide and Dogs fans, let us know. Getting a bit of feedback on the 40 Wings temper, 0433 98 11 16 or 0457 736 736. You can give us a call, 1300 736 736 on the open line. I'll give you a start for the Western Bulldogs. Starting season's better. They're chasing their tail all the time, pardon the pun.
Yeah, I've got that involved.
You can't make top 4 when you start so slow.
No, you can't. No, you can't. We are my Brisbane Lions. Let's get stuck
Your
in.
Brisbane
Stop.
Lions. Well, they could have been your
start,
Brisbane Lions.
Keep. They are.
It could have been.
They are.
Could have donned the Guernsey.
This is as much for them as it is for the fans of the Brisbane Lions. But stop worrying about Joe and his absence and focus on the vast array of lively guns that you've also still got in the forward line. Joe's not coming back, and you will miss him. But Lohman, Rayner, McCarthy, Morris, Archie, and Hipwood can all mark the footy. So it might not be all doom and gloom. You'll miss him, but opportunity will be there for those other guys. And they do have medium-sized forwards who are very, very good overhead.
Can you see the former son having a role, Sam Day?
Unlikely.
What about the young fella from Hawthorn that went up there last year?
Yeah, he's a fascination to me. I was asking a lot about him in we spoke to Danny Daly a few times, asked about his development because he was a strange trade.
SEN's own Danny Daly.
Yes.
Love him here.
Yes, he's on a lot. It was a strange trade that he was involved. His name was involved. So he's one to watch. And the two ruck thing might come back for them because there was a willingness for them to play that. So I think you're always going to miss a player of his caliber, but they are fairly well equipped in different ways to handle his absence. Start ahead of the game. Start out ahead of the game. I don't think you want to be chasing the season in back-to-back seasons because it does take a lot out of you. We know what a premiership and a run to a grand final does to teams anyway in terms of the difficulty for the following preparation. So I don't think Brisbane can really afford to get to 7-7 or worse, sort of midway, 2/3 through the season. So I think they need to really start well. And part of that is getting the Gabba back to being the Gabatoir. It was late,
early,
but early days. It was a free-for-all.
Yeah.
Come on down and beat us. Keep being a force in two different phases of play. I think they're one of the rare teams, and perhaps why they are the premier, that can win the game playing two different styles.
Yeah, okay.
Most teams can win it most teams definitely can win playing their style, but struggle when you have to play a different style. So in the prelim final, they were getting beaten by Geelong, and in the second half, they just embraced chaos.
Yes.
They embraced the ground ball. They embraced speed on the ball. They were ferocious. They were great on the loose balls. But then in the grand final, and I was shaking my head at the commentary in the first quarter. Brisbane are taking all these marks, but they're not doing anything. What they were doing was taking all of the juice out of Sydney, making them defend for their life. I think they took close to 40 marks in the first quarter and completely owned the game in the first quarter and set it up for themselves. So they play that really astute kick and mark game, but with the players that they've got, and Neil and Rayner and Bailey and all these guys who are great at ground balls and great at loose ball gets, they can win and dominate games playing in two different fashions.
So from the team that won the flag, they lose Joe, but they'll have back Oscar McInerney, Lincoln McCarthy, Kitty Coleman, Levi Ashcroft comes in, and Will Ashcroft, you hope, gets a full year.
And Tom Doedee will be back at
and Tom
some
Doedee,
stage.
of course.
You'd like to think. They have not seen him yet, and he's a very good player. It's going to be easy for most of us to forget. Either you may not have seen a lot of him because he was playing in Adelaide.
No, he's good player.
Very good player.
Very good player.
And was brought in to be an upgrade on Ryan Lester.
Who had a great year.
Who had a great season. So they are blessed.
Got a lot of depth.
They are blessed with depth, but that's no guarantee to be up there again.
And they've been up there a long time.
They have.
Without winning
that's
it.
Why
some teams have been able to do that.
That's why I was so glad they got the premiership, because they had built and built and built and been able to get themselves to that space and to that place many times, prelims, home finals. A lot of us had said, they've wasted home finals and COVID and these sorts of things. But again, I'll take this and I'll argue with most premierships that have been won, few more impressive than what they did.
Could they? Is it beyond the realms that they could be a Geelong of a couple of years ago? Knock on the door, finally get there.
Exhale, fall off the perch.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, that for sure. I think there's no doubt about that. And maybe even if you try and delve into their psyche a little bit, they're a bit of a mercurial team. Even at different stages this year, you're waiting, and maybe you're looking back on history, but you're waiting for them to drop off or to have that inaccurate game where they should win, but they don't win. Maybe some of that stuff comes back in, but I think they're still, all of their good players are in their prime or entering their prime. So they should still be there moving forward.
What about our friends across the Nullarbor?
Well, stop, and I've been big on this one. Stop playing Bailey Williams in the ruck. I know. Look, West Coast fans will say, "Well, who else are going to play there?"
Yeah.
I get it.
I get it. Big Flinny, and he got injured.
Gets injured a lot, and they haven't had too many others. I get it, but I truly think he's got the chance to be a really, really talented forward ruck. So 75% forward, 25% ruck.
So you'd play Alan Waterman and him.
Because I think Waterman, even though he likes to play as a full forward, I think he's also very effective getting up the ground and being a hard-working forward. And then you allow Oscar Allen to to not always have to be the aerial target because Waterman's not a big guy. He's not
he's
tall
he's strong,
guy who
but
can
he's not,
stand in packs. Oscar Allen has to do all of that. So stop playing Bailey Williams in the ruck if you can. I understand it. Start developing a really identifiable game plan. Now, that's easy because there's a new coach coming in. So let's see it because what won them a premiership in 2018, kicking and marking, methodical out of the back half. They don't have the talent to do it.
Doesn't work now anyway.
Now, I don't think it works either these days. So it is a bit easier because they've got a brand new coach and mostly some new coaches around him. So make that identifiable to us straight away. Keep throwing them around. Look for your next 150 gamers. High in the draft, low in the draft, mid-season draft. We've seen teams now pick 2 and 3 really good players from the mid-season draft, trade, free agency. You're supposedly one of the powerhouse clubs of the competition. While I think that is at its most obvious, for better or for worse, when it comes to attracting players and keeping players.
5 wins last year. What can they get this year? What's a good year for West Coast?
7. 8 max. I don't think they've got any more than 7 or 8 wins in them. Fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
I think
the scope for a North to improve is far more than a West Coast.
I think there's a world. I think it's more likely they win 3 than 7.
Yeah, I'd tend to agree with that. Yeah.
And that's
at what
that's
stage
not
they're,
to say
what
it'll be
stage they're at.
It's not to say it'll be a terrible year either. That's just where they are at.
Yep, I
just
agree.
the reality of the situation. Sydney. Stop. Now, this is going to be easier said than done. Stop worrying about 2 mammoth grand final losses. You can't rectify them today. You cannot rectify them today. Now, I suffered 1, so I know about this. They suffered 2, much more significant in terms of scoreboard impacts. If you try and worry about we've got to get to the last day to rectify what happened on the last day, you won't make it. Because you'll live in that space and you'll forget about everything that needs to happen along the way. And equally, you won't be able to enjoy the wins along the way. You can't win a game of footy in round 14 in a slog against the team you should beat, but you only just beat and think, well, we're supposed to do that because we're on our way back to a grand final to try and remedy what happened. You have to be able to enjoy each and every moment as you go. That's going to be the difficult thing for them. That's why I think the new voice is important because everything is in place. So don't throw everything out. You've got great talent. You've got plenty of players who have been there, who have got the experience. They're all in the prime of their career. So the new voice at the head of the table is important to help them live in the moment, stay in the moment to allow them to get back to that last day. Do not try and rectify 2 grand final losses in round 2. You can't do it.
True, but it's always going to be in the back of their mind.
It is, but that's the challenge. The challenge is to live in the moment.
Yeah.
Don't live on grand final day 2025 because if you do, you won't get there.
Did you live in the moment?
I reckon we lived.
I'll ask you personally, not team. Personally.
I reckon we didn't do a good enough job at those moments where you win a game or you train well or whatever the case may be, and you are just appreciative of that moment. Yep. I reckon we let too many of those games go by where we thought, well, we're supposed to do that. We're on our way back to a grand final to try and
redeem
ourselves for last year. So that's the big challenge for them. That's because it's all we're going to talk about is can they get back there and can they actually put up a good performance?
But for a good reason. Right, we are going to talk a little bit about that because there is no answer. There is no answer about how much damage has or hasn't been done. Year. Well, we did.
And the answer was
we ignored it. A lot of people ignored it because, and I'll speak for myself, I thought they would win the flag. I thought once we got to grand final week, Sydney will win the flag. Maybe there were signs. Maybe Brisbane's prelim was a better win than what Sydney's. Well, I don't know. But as much as what you are saying is correct, it is a lot easier said than actually done.
So.
In particular for those players who've been in both, which are quite a high number.
Think about things in life that you've gone after that you haven't got to. You haven't got that big job, and then you're unable to go back to your current job or whatever it might be in life. You're always thinking about, I want to just get back there and I want that opportunity again. Sometimes you don't get back there because you're stuck worrying about what happened last time and trying to get back there again versus living in the moment. So that was the stop. This is the start. Start building, I'll call it a secondary phase of footy, a secondary plan.
Okay.
When because now we've seen it twice.
Mm-hmm.
I love watching Sydney play. I love it when I see the schedule, Thursday night footy, Friday night footy, Sunday afternoon footy, and I see Sydney, particularly in Sydney, on the slate, because their offense and their attack and their ability to use the stand rule to their advantage is so good. Their ball use, their kickers, their guys who get handball receives are so good. But twice now on grand final day, they've been pushed aside. They've been out physical. They've been overpowered by really strong physical teams. So Geelong, you think about some of the bodies and the size of the bodies in that team, and you think about the power and the size of Jared Berry and Cam Rayner and those guys in that team. I think now they would probably realise we need to just balance up our smaller guys who can run and kick with some more powerful bodies.
Do they have the personnel to do that now?
Don't know.
Okay.
Really don't know.
So you don't. So
Isaac Heaney's powerful,
Of
won't
course.
get pushed aside.
No, true. So when
James Rowbottom's not powerful, but he won't get pushed
he
aside.
won't. So just before you go any further, so what you're suggesting, you're suggesting it's the right move to make. You're just not sure specifically if they have the personnel on this list.
Well, yes, that's true. Only because we haven't seen them try and do it.
Of course.
So they might have a guy, they might have someone at halfback, like Campbell or Roberts at halfback. Those guys aren't small. They might be able to go into the middle. And I'm not saying you don't have to be the size of Patrick Cripps. James Rowbottom's not a big physical midfielder. But for whatever reason, he's combative. He's got great balance. He doesn't get pushed off the ball. That's all I'm saying. They only need to tweak it a little bit. Because don't go away from what their absolute weapon is, and that is that ball movement and that end-to-end speed of ball.
Which should help them with the MCG.
It should help
traditionally.
them. That's why when they come here, I think they should be better at the MCG because it's bigger and it's wider. Keep as much of the offensive dare and boldness as possible. So that's the part that they can't look past. And this is, again, thinking back to our experience, we were we were so similar to Sydney in terms of our offense was electric. We could move the ball from halfback to the goal square in a blink. But when you get to the last day on the back of that and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean you need to get rid of it. It doesn't mean that just because you didn't win that one-off game that you need to change that part of your game. That's what got us there, but on that day, we just couldn't get it done. So we tried to really focus on being a bit more dour and a bit more defensive and forgot about our attack a little bit. And all of a sudden went from 115 a game, let's try and win 85 to 80 per game. That's not playing to your strengths. So Sydney, whilst they need to make tiny little adjustments with their personnel perhaps around the ball and around the contest, still go after their offense, still go after that end-to-end ball movement because they are the players. If you try and ask Errol Goulden to be more dour and more defensive, I don't think that's going to go well.
No.
Nick Blakey the same. And you can go on and on and on. Justin McInerney, that's not going to go well for them. So keep playing to your strengths whilst trying to identify the areas where you can improve just a little bit.
It's an intriguing year for a million different reasons, but as much as we continue to say, hey, we know how talented they are, there's also the fact that one of their best players is a possibility to maybe leave and go to Western Australia. So it's going to have that hanging over their heads a little bit. And that
Who is another of the slight, lean, sort of one grab? That's the thing I wonder. Look, you think about Blakey and Goulden and Warner and Fox and McInerney. They rely. I reckon if you watch their ball take all the time, this is sort of getting into the nitty gritty, they do rely on clean take gone. The ability to fumble and stay in the contest is probably not there for them like it is for Heaney or for Rowbottom or for Parker, who's departed. So I wonder about that. That's what I'm talking about. Do you need one or two more guys who can actually stand there flat-footed and win the ball versus maybe at the moment they've got 12 or 14 guys who need to get it and go?
And the big thing is they have been a great home and away team. Now they weren't. This is the big 2022. They were humbled on the bigger stage, but they most certainly weren't the best team going in. Geelong were the better team over the home and away season.
Yeah, good point.
Some people have to. It's not losing the game. It's how they lost. Okay, so Geelong belted them. The first half against Brisbane last year was way worse than the first half against Geelong a couple of years earlier. In the end, both games at halftime felt probably too far out of reach for the Swans, and that was the way that it ended up playing out. The big thing will be, as much as everything you have said, absolutely 100% agree with.
I know where you're going.
It just comes down to last Saturday in September for them, which makes it almost impossible.
Okay, that's not where I thought you were going.
No, but it makes it like
Yeah,
last year they were the best team. Right, they may not have been in the best form. You can argue that Brisbane's finals run and the way they ran over Giants and they ran over the Cats had them in better form. You can argue that, okay? And I'm not going to disagree 100%. My point is last year they were the best team, but it made no difference. They got humbled on the biggest stage almost identically, which they did 2 years ago.
They got embarrassed.
Well, okay.
They got embarrassed.
Okay. But the point
I think
is,
they got embarrassed.
I'm
because
sure.
they've had 2 grand finals in 3 years where they've walked off at halftime and that game is over.
Gone.
I think every player in that team, in their heart of hearts, walks off at halftime and thinks the game's over. We can't win the game.
I actually
That's
thought
embarrassing.
In both. Yeah, well, you are in a position to
We
use
were
the word
down by 8
embarrassing.
points.
Hey,
We were down by 8 points at halftime and we probably thought, geez,
I thought you led at halftime.
No, we're down by 8 points from
Yeah,
memory.
okay, 8 or
They're
10
down
was still,
by,
yeah.
now someone can send the numbers in on the 2 grand finals, but they're down by, let's call it 45 in the first one and 40 in the second. The game's over.
It was over. No argument. Best team or otherwise,
The
the game was
psychologist
done.
might be the most important person
I
at the
agree.
Sydney Football Club this year.
I agree, and there's got to be a fine line between being able to look at what happened on that last Saturday in September.
Because they'll be easily attacked from a verbal perspective from the opposition as well.
Will you?
Well, because they play with brashness, don't
Yeah.
they? They play not arrogantly, but with that air of arrogance.
Which makes them fun to watch.
Well, how easy is it going to be for an opponent to say, "What are you so arrogant about?"
Yeah.
I watched the grand final. How'd you go then? That's going to be the easiest thing for opponents to say.
Did you boys get lipped much in 2018?
Not really. A little bit, like having a shot for goal or whatever, but a little bit, and some of it can sting a little bit because there's not a great comeback to if Chad Warner's kicked a goal and he's up and about and he's smiling and he's carrying on, and someone drops a shrewd little comment about, geez, that would have been handy grand final day. There's not a lot you can say to go back at that. So St Kilda, stop. Now, I'm a bit heavy on the game style with the Saints, but stop playing your +1, your extra behind the ball so far away from the contest. Any wonder your attack is weak and impotent. I watched them play live a fair few times last year, and when they'd have what clubs call an A-mid stoppage or a stoppage between the arcs but in their half of the ground, so between the forward 50 arc and the centre of the ground, they would have Cal Wilkie typically as the +1, the spare defender, 100 metres from the ball, which makes scoring very, very hard. Is there any risk we could have a Jack Sinclair or a Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera just camped off the back of stoppage, or both, who can set the game up and cut the game up off the back of a stoppage?
Surely that has to come into play.
Surely.
Because
the
of
backs
what-
can play 1v1 and we can set that up.
How good Wanganeen-Millera was
Thank
this
you.
year.
Thank you. So
Set
that's
him
the
up.
stop. Stop playing your +1,
Okay.
your extra, 150 metres away from the ball. Start. I'll be interested to see if you agree with this. Start playing Mitch Owens as a genuine mid. I thought his role was difficult last year. He was asked to play as a defensive forward on a couple of occasions.
That's wrong.
He was asked to play that high half forward role a fair bit. It's very hard for him to be really effective in a team that's not a great scoring team, not a fluent ball movement team. I think this kid's got fast feet, quick hands, great size, great in a contest. Brad Crouch is gone. Seb Ross is gone. I think Mitch Owens could go in there and be a clearance and tackling
Depends
gun.
on the style, right? So I like that, but they've got to start scoring 90 points a game, not 60 to
They
70.
definitely
right? So
do.
if they change their style and start scoring 90 plus points a game, then Owens has to play as a forward because his class seeing more ball and more winnable ball will allow them to score the way that we'd love to see them score.
And they need to
Right.
score.
They need to score
Yes.
because the defensive side of things and that's where if he plays as a midfielder, then they're going to play a defensive structure because they want him in the game more to help try and save from what the opposition are doing, plus obviously try and assist in attack from a midfield point of view. So wait and see on the style for that one for me.
Keep inventing ways to get the ball in the hands of Liam Henry. Use him as a mid or an extra mid who charges through stoppage.
Mm-hmm.
Use him as that striker type that we've heard clubs use and talk about. Line him up off the back of a stoppage if you want. I'm talking about having your +1 closer to the stoppage so you can be more dangerous. When he got the ball last year in a little bit of space, great things happened for St Kilda. And it jumps off the page, it jumps off the screen at you because a lot of the other stuff you see from them in attack is not as threatening. Whenever he gets the ball, good things seem to happen. So find ways, keep inventing ways to get Liam Henry in the game.
He got more and more confident as the year went on. He certainly understood the game style and his teammates as the year went on. So I think that helped him. So
got a hammy at the wrong time as well.
But this is a big year for Liam Henry.
Yeah,
I think in terms of where the expectations are that he can go as a player.
So there's your stop, start, keep for the St Kilda Footy Club. Let us know your thoughts. 1300 736 736. Jump on the line or send us a 40 Winks temper text 0433 98 11 16.
There's been one message come through. Change their style is the most uninformed opinion. They get the ball inside 50. They just suck at hitting targets, right? But that's all part of their scoring is the biggest issue. So is it simply so we're talking about Sinclair and Wanganeen Miller. Are they more your wing style pushing up higher? Is Wanganeen Miller become a midfielder?
The way,
because I'm trying to think of if that's the opinion of St Kilda fans that their scoring was off the back of poor entries, then what the reflect is, are they going to fix up the players are more consistently around the ball that can use it well to hit better targets?
And the last time I checked, Tom, that was from Tom, they haven't had a quantum shift in the guys that are going to be kicking the ball in there.
But the other issue was they were so slow in, we're talking the back half of the ground, chipping sideways, going out wide to the wings, that the opposition could flood the defence. So the opposition didn't mind actually St Kilda getting it in there because they knew they'd win it back there and start their game against the Saints from that. So you can say they had a lot of ball inside 50, but it was the way and how slow they were going inside forward 50. The Oppo loved it.
Melbourne, similar. How often did we hear or see and read stats when Melbourne would play a game of footy? They had +12 inside 50s or +15 inside 50s, but it's the quality of your inside 50s. It's what it looks like. It's the speed. I've always thought a great measurement would be in AFL if there was an ability to track the speed of the ball going over the 50-metre arc. Because when that ball's going over the 50-metre arc at speed and it's low, generally it's because there's space inside forward 50, there's guys on the move. When it's going high and slow and long, you've got next to no chance of taking a mark. You're just relying on a free kick or a lucky crumb or a lucky bounce. So I accept the fact they get the ball inside 50 a lot, but the proof's in the pudding. If you're unable to score, then you've got to find different ways
and they certainly
do that.
They had opportunities in 24, because I was the same year. I watched them a lot, and I was at a lot of their games live, that they won good ball, but then they'd come out wide to the wing, and then they lost any speed on that. They weren't able then to go back on the 45 and then start cutting the ball either to the other side of the ground for an entry or back through the corridor. So I'd love to see some changes. They've got the talent there, St Kilda, and if they do change aspects of the way they play and they can lift their scoring because of what they do better off halfback or better behind the ball to generate some speed on it, then they've got the talent forward to be able to hit the scoreboard regularly. Keep
those messages coming through, 0433 98 11 16. A heap of them coming through. Tom also saying that McRae and Philippou and some of the halfbacks are really good kicks inside 50. So maybe it is getting the ball into the right hands. Maybe
McRae's a good link through the midfield. If they can get into his hands, he can turn and hit a
and he can kick them back on the inside.
Angle, right?
So creative kick, isn't he? So that's a good point there from Tom. Keep those messages coming through, and if you want to jump on the line, talk about the Saints or the Bombers or the Pies, you can 1300 736 736. We'll go to Collingwood. Stop thinking about anything other than getting back to the 2023 domination of the halfback turnover game. So think about Collingwood's premiership season, because that was such a weapon for them. And they have acquired another weapon in that space, Dan Houston. And that's why I was all in on any of the clubs who were keen on him going after Dan Houston. So back in 2023, think about, and Collingwood fans can probably do this quite easily, the ball would be turned over by Collingwood at half-back, and you'd see Crisp and Pendlebury and De Goey and Dacos, and now Houston charging back through the middle of the ground, handball, kick out the back to Elliott, kick out into space to Bobby Hill, kick to a contest out the back to Myercheck. The game was made so easy for their forwards, who on paper aren't a match-winning forward line, but the way that Collingwood were able to turn the ball over and run and charge through the middle part of the ground and get the ball in the hands of Dacos and Pendlebury, great decision makers, life was made very easy for them. So that's the stop. Stop thinking about any part of your game except for getting back to that.
Do you think that's where the game is still going to be dominated in 2025? Is that half-back dominance?
I think the turnover game is still going to be the most prominent factor in footy. So creating turnovers and then being able to score off turnover.
So for Collingwood, it's where they're creating it to give them the ability.
And the reason you hear teams say don't kick it short inside 50 if you're not sure is because it's so hard to defend that turnover. And that's what Collingwood were brilliant at. So get back to that, Pies fans. Start finding a way to blood the kids, because I think this will be a consistent theme. It'll be a very consistent – it's been a consistent theme with Geelong. So Geelong, if you don't get what you want, vested interest out the back. If you don't get what you want and you don't win premierships with your ageing list, you'll fall off the cliff. Well, Collingwood are going in with a heap of 30-pluses, and we know who they are. Some are 31, some are 32, some are 35. If things go
Doesn't
badly,
matter these days, mate.
If things go badly and those older guys don't get the job done, and we haven't seen the kids, then you'll get to the end of the season and you'll have 6 or 7 33-year-olds that you need to move along, which is hard to do all at once. And you'll have a bunch of young kids who we don't know whether they can play at the level. So start finding a way whilst having that eye on the prize and playing your better players.
It's going to be tough to break in.
Well, you've got to break them in.
You have to, but it's going to be tough.
You've got to break them in.
Their best 23 to start the year.
Doesn't have many kids in it.
Ed Allen is the only one.
Only one? Huh? Vested interest. He's been in your ear.
No, but he is. Seriously.
He's been in your ear.
So you've got Ed Allen, which I think is the right move. I think Bo McCreary will go to another level. All the others, and I know Nick Dacos is the young gun, and he's still very young. But other than that, it's the same names. So will we see a couple of players, like you said, break into this lineup and a couple of senior players
I think they need
it
to
a bit
force
harder?
It. I think Craig McRae and the coaching group need to force their own hand and make sure that we see some in case they finish 10th with the 30-pluses and then you're in the middle of nowhere. Keep up, and this is for the Collingwood fans and us, keep up the Darcy Cameron love. He's so important to them and was so good for them last year. A lot of the conversation around the ruckmen were really even last year, and he was mentioned, but it was largely, Marshall and Max Gawn when he was at his best, and was Tristan Sherry, the All-Australian ruckman, one or two others in the mix. He wasn't that far away. He was so good for them. He's almost played so well that there's not really a spot for Mason Cox in the team. He is so durable. He's honest. He backs back into packs, and I think he's the best two-grab mark in the competition, and that is a compliment. That is a compliment because he backs back down the line in contests, and he's able to get first hand on it, stay in the contest, and mark it. It's a compliment.
That's a good compliment.
It's a compliment.
I must admit, I didn't expect.
It's better than being a one-grab fumbler.
Two-grab mark in the competition.
It's better than being a one-grab fumbler.
That'll be top of his CV. What do you know for?
I was the best two-grab mark in the competition. So there's stop, start, keep for Collingwood. Stop allowing the burden of your finals drought to weigh you down. This is to supporters as well.
So how are you doing this though, JJ? Because it's something that it's a real thing.
It is a real thing. It is a real. Well, it's an intangible though. It's an intangible. It's a shadow. It's a shadow.
But even if they have an off the charts year, right, and they get themselves and they secure a finals berth with 5 rounds to go, the talk will still be.
Well, this is
haven't won a final in 20 odd years,
whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is.
7,000 days.
Yeah.
Okay, this is my solution to it. So don't allow it to weigh you down. Just be a totally forward-facing footy club. Refuse to answer questions on it. So make a pact as a team, as a group, to refuse to answer questions on it. So if a player's at a press conference, just answer everything with, we are totally focused on 2025 and beyond. What happened in 23, 21, 19 is not
but will that
all relevant.
Okay, so
with
will that be
2025.
accepted though, JJ? That's the thing. Like, will that just inflame the situation because you're not answering? Aren't you better off going, well, yep, that's happened. This is us now, and we've got ourselves into the position.
Well, that's the same
and we're in a great spot to win a final.
I'd leave out the last bit.
To win a final.
Give the same monotonous answer until the journos realise, don't even bother.
Yep.
Don't even bother. Just be don't even get sucked into the narrative and the talk about, they're getting close to a final. They haven't won one in so long. Don't give an inch.
So you don't even talk about it internally then?
No. You have the conversation about, we are not giving anyone anything on this. Yep. We are totally focused on 25 and beyond. Start showing us what you're going to look like. Now, it's difficult for them to do it right here, right now, but start showing us this season and maybe next what you're going to look like at each end of the ground. Why can't, I want to throw this one at you and Bombers fans, 1300 736 736. Why can't Redmond and Ridley share the secondary tall forward? Not many teams have got 2 hulking key forwards. Jordan Ridley is listed, we're still allowed to know how tall they are, is listed at 195 centimetres. That is a tall man. He's got long arms. Mason Redmond has very long arms. He's a very rangy athlete. I remember playing on Sean Burgoyne and Luke Hodge. They would play as a pseudo tall, and you might outmark them twice. But you know how many rebound 50s they'd get against me? They'd just run off, have a merry dance. These guys could do the same. So maybe it's Mackay playing on the big, powerful key forward, and then maybe Ridley can actually play on a secondary key forward.
I get the aspect of getting Mackay in was to free Ridley up a little bit because he's so good in the air, reading what the opposition are doing and starting attack from his intercept. So I get that. So I understand what you're saying. Whether Redmond is the one that can become a bit more of a floater. Redmond's more, and he's so dangerous when he's ball in hand, breaking D50 and then using it well by foot. Not so much your mark, stagnant, chip sideways. You don't want Redmond doing that too often. You want him on the release to be able to be positive with his ball movement because of how effective he can be. So there's that fine balance between, I think, with Ridley in particular for Essendon, whether or not it's the second tall, and it was Laverde.
Laverde was
from
there,
memory.
Yeah.
So
has played that role.
That's right. So it's whether there's someone else who I can't think of at the moment.
Zach Reed's the one they're waiting for.
Possibly.
And have been waiting for.
Well, that's the perfect scenario, is the second tall to allow Ridley and Redmond to control the game the way they like to. I think that's the most positive outcome for the Bombers.
So that's my start for them. So both ends of the ground. I think Kyle Langford will get back to having an All-Australian calibre. I think he'll benefit from Stringer not being there. I feel like even though they're very different players, they both want to play. I think Kyle Langford likes to play in a similar manner to the way you played, with, a little bit of space, may occasionally be the closest to goal, occasionally get up the ground.
He's improved out of sight as a forward.
Yeah, hasn't he?
Big time.
Well, to the point, he was an All-Australian the year before last. So I think because he and Stringer both felt like they wanted to be, they want to do it differently, but they want to be in the same part of the ground, the same areas.
The thing with Langford, he's not looking for midfield time at all. So what you've got is a guy that is consistently inside 50 for you. He's good in the air, reasonable on the ground, and can be...
Sort of 15 and 2 every week type thing.
Yep.
Keep playing Nick Bryan. I called him the unluckiest player in the competition last year. So he played 5 AFL games. He had 15 disposals, 13 and 10. And then he was subbed out in the other match where he had eight possessions before being subbed from the game. He laid 3 tackles per game, 3 clearances per game and had 20 hitouts per game. So when he got the opportunity and he was playing alongside another ruckman, so wasn't getting the lion's share of the opportunities in the ruck, he looked good. Draper's yet to take that role by the scruff of the neck. He showed plenty of signs, but he's yet to show me anyway that he can be a 90% ruckman. And Goldie's Goldie. Sensational backup, great leader, great person to have around the footy club. But I think they just have to keep playing Nick Bryan.
And Goldie, in your eyes, does Goldie just become
Bryan's backup?
The insurance?
In a way. Yeah, probably. Now, he might be good enough. He might get you closer to a win from week to week than Bryan does, but it's marginal. Like Goldie's not going to, you wouldn't expect, Goldie's going to not take over a game and be the reason you won a game. He shouldn't be the reason you win or you lose at this point in his career. The Gold Coast Football Club, the rebranded, re-logoed
Do you
Gold
like
Coast. It? Yes, I'm happy with it.
So am I.
Again, most people's starting point is that looks terrible, but I don't mind it.
It's fine.
Probably like to see the logo a little bit more. It's a little bit sort of transparent, but look, all in all, again,
It'll evolve.
it'll be the greatest jumper of all time if they win the premiership this year. That's what most people...
Can they, JJ?
Well, what they are and what they have been is a bit of an acquired taste, the Gold Coast Suns. And I like them. I love them. And they're an acquired taste for acquired financial services, helping you acquire a better tomorrow. The Suns have been fascinating. Stop, start, keep for them. Stop worrying about what the world says you have not done and focus in on what you can achieve in the next 3 years. And I've said the next 3 years for a specific reason. I'm personally all in on the group from 2026. Now, I want them to make the finals this year. I'd not expect them to make the finals this year, but close enough to. But if you want to be objective, go forgetting about what they haven't done, forgetting about the times that they have disappointed us and let us down and not made finals and not done what we thought they should have done. Go and have a look at their playing list right here, right now. Go and have a look at the players who are either in the prime of their career or entering the prime of their career, and then tell me that from 2026, for the next 2 or 3 years, they shouldn't be a powerhouse. The only players I could see on their list who might be going down the other side of the hill by then, Jared Witts, and I'll get to that shortly, and maybe Sam Collins. But they do have Charlie Ballard and Mac Andrew back there. So if Collins was to fall off the perch, then they would have some level of cover, but he is a fantastic player.
They can cover that potentially through trade anyway in the next couple of years.
They can. So you go and look at this list and tell me they're not about to launch or they're not perfectly placed to launch with Damien Hardwick having had 1, 2, 3 preseasons with them. So stop worrying about what the world says you haven't done and focus in on what you're about to do. Start showing us, though, your brand, the brand of footy we see at home, but the brand of footy we never saw on the road. Show us that. They get dictated to. I saw them probably 3 times on the road last year, and their game style just looks completely different when they play here in Melbourne or on the road.
Yep.
At home, they can go into the trenches with their midfielders and they can beat you up around the ball. Their ball movement looks great at home.
They handle their home conditions unbelievably well because it is a little bit slippery.
But then they get stagnant with their ball, with the ball in hand. You know, at the MCG where it should be easy to move the footy because there's more space, they get stagnant. You know, they had some awful games to watch at Marvel. I called them against St Kilda. It was 52-48. It still haunts me, that game, having to sit through that game. So show us what your game looks like on the road. And that's how you become a consistent football team. And I mentioned Jared Witts, and maybe he's the one who in 2 years' time is not necessarily at the peak of his powers. Well, they've got the best backup big man in the competition. Ned Moyle is ready-made, good to go. He might be better than Jared Witts right here, right now. But Jared Witts is the captain of the footy club.
They play well when Witts is in the team.
They do.
When he's not, he's the one that they
if
miss
you
the
haven't
most.
seen much of him, Ned Moyle.
He was part of the AFL Academy. I know Ned and what he's been able to do, and you watch them obviously closely because of that.
Big, aggressive, hulking player
Big guy.
got some opportunities last year and looked fantastic when he had them. So keep being open about the prospect of Ned Moyle overtaking Jared Witts. I'm not saying you need to force it. And look, Ned Moyle might have to just wait and play only half a dozen games this year, but be open to the prospect. Just because Jared Witts is your captain or your co-captain, be open to the prospect that Ned Moyle could overtake him this year. So that's why, even though some others aren't, that's why I think they're an acquired taste. And I have acquired the taste for the Gold Coast Suns. I'm big on them. So for Acquired Financial Services, they understand that financing your dreams is more than just numbers. AcquiredFinance.com, and I've acquired the Suns.
Recruiter Daniel Rioli, he'll play off half back.
Yes,
John
we love
Noble
that.
as well, who I like as a player. John Noble, and so I think he'll slot straight
Guys
in
who can
as well.
kick the footy around.
Yep. So they're midfield strong, right? We understand that the names that roll through there. Flanders will add some more midfield time in there as well. Bailey Humphrey's the interesting one here because this young man can play, right?
Here we go.
He can play. And
Here we
I
go.
was in Darwin with Eddie Betts and watched the
Yes.
Cats v Gold Coast and watched this guy turn one on. He kicked 5.
He looked a little dusty like.
He did, yes. He was don't argues and he was strong and controlled the footy.
Yes.
He had to be his best game of his career. Will we see more of that consistently from Bailey Humphrey?
Well, you tell me.
I'm asking you.
You can't remember saying it. You likened him to Dustin Martin in trade period.
Well, yes.
In this very studio.
So he's a gun. And he will be his body size and
Yes.
traits is what could become the best player in the comp in the future. But
He's gone there again.
well, I will go there again. Similar to Isaac Heaney. It took Isaac a little bit longer than
Yep.
I thought it would, but same theory in regards to his athletic traits, his power, gives him the best setup as a player to really dominate the competition.
Still likely to be. Has he got any midfield time in him, or is he
Absolutely.
that dynamic, medium-sized forward?
Absolutely. He's got to play both roles.
What's
and
the
play
breakdown for him? Because there aren't.
What was Dusty? 60-40 forward?
Yeah, probably at different stages would flip that and go 60-40 as a mid.
It just depends on stage of game.
And what the game needs.
I think it'll get to that in 3 or 4 years' time. This guy's still really young, of course. So in 3 years' time, it might be he's dominating as a forward. We keep him down there longer. No, we need some midfield minutes because we need a big body through there with power and strength. Then he might flip it. So he'll have that flexibility in his game as the years go on.
And I think Damien Hardwick and Sean Griggs, the midfield coach, will have. And one of the things Sean Grigg was big on was lowering the midfielders' game time so that whenever you're in there, you're powerful. When I was working in Clubland, Rowell, Witts, Miller, those guys were playing 92, 93% time on the ground as a midfielder. That's why they're getting tired and being worn out of games.
That's
so
right.
they need a Humphrey and a few others to come in and share that around.
So it'll go closely, I think, as well. So it'll go beyond. It's going beyond Miller, which I think is a good thing because a few years ago it was Miller and then a massive gap, right, to the next midfielder and the way they're able to consistently play 4 quarters of footy. Now a couple of them have caught up to Miller and a couple have probably gone past him, which I'm not downplaying Miller's impact in the game. It's still significantly
It's a positive for the
good,
team.
but it's a positive for the team.
It is. I can't find a market for the 2026 AFL Premiership, but if there was one there, I might have $5 on the Suns. I'm all in on the Suns. From 2026, Rod, you can have the Hawks in this season. They can win the flag. I think they're co-flag favourites, if you can believe that. But the Suns... yeah, I know. I'm talking about...
It's all beautiful if you're a Hawk right now.
Talk about an overreaction. The Hawks were at one stage. I'm not sure if they still are. We might have a look after 5 o'clock. Co-premiership favourites. But that's a look at the Gold Coast Footy Club. The Geelong Football Club. Stop, start, keep here on the run home.
Okay. So
Not
you
the
know this
drive
club
home.
intimately. So this will be
Yes,
excellent
and-
listening.
Yes, some some clubs are more difficult than others. Some are quite easy to come up with. So stop moving Jeremy Cameron around the ground, which they did for the most part in the back half of the year. But it became a little bit frustrating to me and to those who barrack for the football club, which I don't. Seeing him, on the wing when it looked to me like they needed him inside forward 50. Big Hawk was struggling with his body. Hadn't done much of a pre-season, and the forward line wasn't functioning sensationally. Now, the idea was born in the preseason of 24.
It worked early, didn't it? Where he was getting 30. Was he getting
But I
30 and kicking a couple? He was
I
getting
think
a lot
we
of
were
footy.
in love with the. I think we were in love with the novelty aspect of it. I don't know how well it was servicing the team. It was servicing him because he was having some amazing games, 25-3 and 30-4 and this, that, and the other. Now, the idea started in 2024. It was effective for him in the early part of 2024, but I reckon it died in 2024 as well because they need him. There's no Tom Hawkins returning. He's chasing the cows around the regional paddocks and cattle yards. And I think Jeremy Cameron needs to be parked inside forward 50 from rounds 1 through to whenever they finish their season, 60-plus goals. That spearhead in the way he goes about it, not the way a typical spearhead will go about it, but he needs to be inside forward 50 for 98% of his season.
I agree. And when you look at 2024, his first 6 games, it was 21-2, then 9 disposals, 15-2, 27, 2 goals, 4, 21-6 goals, 17-0, 17, 5 goals, 15, 3 behinds. And then he went sort of 1-1-1, 2-3-2. But then the back half, when you said that they threw him back towards inside forward 50, forward half of the ground, he just ignited in terms of what he was able to do on the scoreboard. 4s, 3s, 6s, and 9 in there as well. And the 9 was against West Coast in round 25.
You'd love to see his heat chart, his heat map.
You would actually. I agree with that. He finished with 64 goals, 41 on the year, so 105 shots.
Maybe 70 plus then. What might be the number? 70, 75. We know he's capable. We know he's more than capable. I reckon his PB would be around 80. I reckon he might have had an 80 or a high 70s in there. He's got a Coleman medal. So, it's something I think they should stick with in 2025. Jeremy Cameron inside 50 as a key forward. This is a specific one for an individual again. Start coaching Sam De Koning harder. Start coaching Sam De Koning harder. I love him. I love the kid. I've worked alongside him, played some VFL footy with him. I love him, and I loved working with him. But I reckon at stages last year, he competed harder against me at training than he did in the games. For whatever reason, whether he got comfortable, whether he got confused in his role. I just saw him, he was sagging a lot against his opponent. He'd allow them to hit up on the wing and take a mark. And, Johnny, you've played on gun defenders. You love it when they give you an inch. They give you a bit of leg rope and say, okay, go and have a mark. Well, that's fine. I mightn't kick a goal against you on the wing, but I'm getting my hands on the footy.
That's right.
Versus those defenders who doesn't matter where you go, they don't want to concede anything. That was Sam in his first year, the premiership year. I just reckon at different stages last year, he was giving his opponent a little bit of space and dropping off and looking to protect the goals where possible. I think lock him in. Key defender. He's your number one key defender. Forget about any time in the ruck. You are our number one key defender, and we're going to coach you accordingly. And if you are dropping off your man, we're going to coach you hard.
How much did the injury, you think, hurt him? Was it early on in the year? Because he obviously had the mask on, the big face mask.
And I think there was a knee niggle in there as well. But when you're out there, you're deemed 100% fit, even though we know you're not. But I reckon he can be coached really hard, and I know him well, and I know that's what he wants. So if they can bring the best out in him in terms of his competitive spirit, because he's an incredibly competitive young man, they'll have their number one key defender that they had when he was a part of their premiership team. Keep being creative and keep being chased in that space. I think Collingwood, in a way, are chasing what Geelong have been able to do from a list perspective. I think Collingwood are the first club to acknowledge that Geelong do a great job in, playing your older guys longer in their career and then finding a way to blood some young players along the way. The other creative thing we spoke about was the Tom Stewart role. Now, we watch it and we think, well, it's not that hard. He just starts on the defensive side of the stoppage, and as soon as the ball leaves the area, he backs out and he becomes a defender. But you and I spoke about it off air. As an opponent, that's an incredibly difficult thing for you to do. It's natural for Tom to do, but as a forward who might be playing as a defensive forward, okay, I've got to go into a stoppage. That's a bit foreign. And now I've got to actually back away from the ball. That's difficult. the same way it would be as a forward coming up to try and find him. Well, you're trying to watch the ball. You're trying to, have your forward patterns as well. So they're very creative, and a lot of that is driven by the head coach, Chris Scott.
What do you see the role for Bailey Smith then? How do you see this working for this young man entering the side 12 months out of the game, especially early in the season?
I reckon a blend of. I wouldn't be surprised to see him at half back a little bit with the prospect and the idea of, and I can see Chris saying this to the team: give him the ball, handball him the ball, and if he makes a few mistakes. And if we make a few mistakes because we're trying to give him the ball too much, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll live with it. Because I've heard him say the same things about Tom Hawkins. Get the big fella the ball in the first quarter. And if you make a mistake trying to force feed one of our best forwards, then that's fine. I'll live with that. And I think that's what you might see from them with Bailey Smith early in the season. He might go to halfback just because it might be easier for him to get a few handball receives and get involved in the game. That might tell him to go and take a few kickouts. Get your hands on the ball. Feel good about yourself. Be involved in the game.
I think it helps Max Holmes a lot, having someone like Bailey Smith around.
Well, at their best, very similar players, aren't they?
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Their run, their carry, their power, their ability to break lines. I think eventually the best version of Bailey Smith will be that inside-outside midfielder for them.
I'm excited about where Tanner Bruin will go with his footy in 2025.
Yeah,
I really am.
I'm a big fan of him.
Yeah, his growth as a player last year in particular was excellent, and I think there's more levels.
There's upside in him.
There is big time.
Yeah, super competitive young guy. Not a big midfielder, but he's super competitive. Got good skills on both sides. Clean.
You're right about the combination of older players and younger players over time, because we obviously Dempsey with what he was able to achieve.
And they went and identified, and this was a conversation we had in trade period. They identified, and I think some of the shrewdest business you can make as a list manager is the trades that they made for Ollie Henry and Tanner Bruin. They effectively gave up the same pick or the same position in the draft that they were drafted at, but you've got the 2 years of evidence that they can actually play. So you're not taking a speculative, reach that they can play. You're trading the same as what they were drafted at, but they can play. So those type of second, third year trades are really shrewd. So they've been able to work in Lawson Humphreys. Now, look, Lawson Humphreys is probably more luck than great management. They probably thought to themselves, let's take a chance on him, and if it works out, then we'll go and get it done. So they've been able to work their way through that. In the past couple of years, the balance of having the older guys carry the load and the young guys work their way through at the same time.
Can you still see it being the same with the high half forwards, Close, Myers, Manor?
Yeah, same group.
Same group of guys?
Yeah.
So Bailey Smith doesn't interrupt that? I know you said he might play behind the ball a little bit.
Really in Geelong's system, and obviously I know it a bit better than other systems. Really specific role there. That's why Manners' performances were so impressive because of the way they go about it.